So Scrappy said he didn't like Candace anymore. So, I mean, you didn't have to like her from the beginning, but I'm just kind of against her being misrepresented and just being lied about. Yeah, no one's perfect, but she's not what they accuse her of being, in my opinion. Reform conservative. Why is an Orthodox an option? Nama. Like, I'm Orthodox, by the way. Like, I'm not a Reform or conservative. It is what? It is an option. Hold on, guys. Hey, what's up? How's it going?
Nothing much, man. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. Hold on, I'm setting up my YouTube here.
Cool. I just had a quick question. Most of the Jews I've talked to said it's like it's an ethno religion.
Right, I disagree.
Like, what's the percentage you'd say within Judaism that say like it's an ethno religion versus it's an open religion?
So I would say that the vast majority of modern Orthodox Jews are people who really identify with Zionism would call it an ethno religion, while those who don't won't. So I would say the vast majority. That would be the vast majority. I consider myself modern Orthodox. So in the MO world, because of Zionism, and I support the state of Israel, by the way, but most Orthodox Jews, at least in the ultra-Orthodox world, support Israel but don't call themselves Zionists. So yeah, I would say the bulk of Jews would call it an ethno religion, but this is really post 1948. Yeah.
Okay. And what is it within Reform? Because my understanding is that most Jews are Reformed, or is that incorrect?
No, that's incorrect. Most Jews aren't Reform. Okay, so the term Reform has been used to, instead of saying not Orthodox, like not Orthodox or not very religious, some people will say, well, I'm Reformed. But if you count how many Reformed synagogues there are in America, they don't compare to how many Orthodox synagogues there are. So people just say Reform, yeah, again, like just saying like I'm not very religious, but that actually identify as Reform, that actually go to shul, very, very little. Yeah.
Gotcha. So most of like the secular Jews are just call themselves Reformed, but they don't actually.
Correct. Reform, or if they want to be more traditional, they'll call themselves conservative. But they typically inhabit the same synagogues. Reform Jews will go to conservative synagogues and vice versa. Conservative Judaism is a serious form of Judaism, but they say the only true conservative Jew is a conservative rabbi, because most people who go to conservative synagogue are really more Reform, because conservative Jews have to do everything that Orthodox Jews do. They're just a little more liberal on some things, but they really don't break any law. They have to keep kosher. The idea of having a woman rabbi doesn't break any law. Not having a separation, what we call a mechitza, doesn't break any laws. That's more like of a custom. So yeah, Reform Judaism is the one that just went against. Yeah.
Oh, so just so I understand, so Reformed, Conservative, and Orthodox, the major factions within Judaism?
Yeah. If you could even consider Reform an actual faction, right? I mean, it really distinguished themselves by making the bulk of Torah commandments optional. So it's more cultural than anything. If you're looking for something that resembles some sort of Semitic heritage festival, festival every week, that's Reform Judaism. While Conservative Judaism, yeah.
I'm Israeli, so hearing you say that makes me laugh.
Yeah. Well, there's Reform in Israel. So like I lived in Israel for 5 years. So like by the King David, the Hebrew Union College has a branch.
Oh no, I'm not Reform. I was raised Chiloni with no religion at all, and I'm Baal Tshuva. I came to modern Orthodoxy a few years ago.
So surprisingly, like most Israelis make tshuva when they come to America. Because in Israel, for some reason, it's just not the thing to do.
Isn't that ironic?
Yeah. So what part of Israel are you from?
Jews understood the history of Reform and Conservative Judaism in Europe, so that they would have a better comprehension of what's at stake.
Well, Conservative Judaism was founded in America But Reform Judaism, it
Yeah.
was founded 170 years ago in Germany. And
Yep.
but Reform Judaism, when it started off, it was quite identical to Orthodox, with the exception that the drash was said in Yiddish instead of Hebrew. And they kind of drug an organ into the shul. But there was still like an Ezras Nashim, like a Mechitza. Like in Europe, like the Mechitza was the second floor of the shul. But now it's
because
like,
it was meant to model the temple where the Ezrat Nashim had the Mechitza, the
platform
on the second floor.
Right. Yeah. So there you go. So where do you live, Nama?
How do the American Jews compare to the Israelis? The Israeli Jews more Reformed or more Orthodox, you'd say?
It's different. Secular Jews in Israel are a lot more conservative, let's say politically, than secular Jews in America. Israelis make fun of Americans. Like most Jews in America, like are Ashkenazi, while most Jews in Israel are non-Ashkenazi. I don't want to say Sephardi because they're a mixture of different things, but they're like night and day different. They have nothing in common, essentially. With the exception that they may not be, quote unquote, from, but even Israelis keep Shabbos to some extent. Like on Friday night, they'll go to a parent's house or something. It's more traditional.
Of it.
What?
They're cognizant of it.
Yeah.
I think the best way that I heard it described is that in America, you as a Jew, if you identify as a practicing Jew on whatever level that may be, you have to actively choose to seek out your practice, and every Jew is a Jew by choice because we are the minority in the U.S. And in Israel, the opposite is true. You are a Jew by default unless you're presumed Jewish unless identified otherwise, and you have to actively seek out to not be Jewish in Israel because it's the state religion.
Right. It's kind of hard to get non-kosher food.
The official religion.
Say it again?
It's the official religion of Israel? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I don't think they have these official religions. I just found out that in Israel, the official languages are like French is still on the books. I don't think they ever removed it. It's like French, Arabic, and Hebrew. It's not even English. But obviously, like if you drive down the streets, all the signs are going to be in English, Hebrew, and Arabic. But
I heard Hebrew was essentially like a dead language, and they just brought it back from
So not necessarily. So people quote. There's someone named Eliezer ben Yehuda, right? So Eliezer ben Yehuda, what he did was that he introduced modern day concepts like fountain pen and I don't know, car. Yeah, into the Hebrew language. But Hebrew was very much alive. We have many, many rabbinic texts that go all the way up to the 3rd and 4th century of the Common Era in Hebrew and even Aramaic and even, so people know how to read and speak it, but it was never, in my opinion, and this is the opinion of many people, it was never really spoken in Israel. Very similar to Hasidim nowadays. Hasidim will typically only, in terms of Lashon HaKadosh, they'll daven in Hebrew and they'll read Hebrew text, but when they speak, on secular topics, they'll speak in Yiddish. So, the idea that Hebrew existed with curse words I don't know, Lech Lazazel and all this stuff, I don't think that ever really existed.
It's funny because the only comparison I think to sort of secular non-Jewish society is Latin for church-based prayer in Catholicism, and then the local tongue of whatever nation you were in or whatever city or village you were in. And Joey, that's I think what he meant by Lashon HaKodesh, the holy language. It was only ever intended to be the language of the Torah. That is what the Torah is written in. So Aramaic then becomes kind of a pidgin, a combination of Hebrew and Arabic in the region for thousands of years. And eventually it would, like he said, it's not dead. It is actively used for very specific things like prayer. And for it to be turned into a conversational language was actually unheard of. Originally, the people who rallied to make Israel a state, they wanted the national language to be Yiddish, not Hebrew. There was a tremendous fight about it. And eventually Hebrew won out. But the man who made it happen, he and his family were ostracized for a long time for wanting Hebrew to be the national language because it was so shocking to the European Ashkenazim. But Hebrew won out, and here we are.
So help me understand. There's just one thing that is confusing me. If most of the Jews that live in Israel are from a mix of Sephardic tradition and not Ashkenazi, why would they want Yiddish to be the dominant language in Israel?
With the initial people who immigrated Israel, there's different levels, like different aliyot, and they were essentially all Ashkenazim. It wasn't until after 1948, and really I think after 1956, that the Middle Eastern Jews and Jews from that region were exiled from their lands, that they were forced to be absorbed into the new state of Israel. But the founding fathers of the state of Israel, those who drained the swamps, were mainly Ashkenazim, like communists who had this agrarian vision for Jewish survival in the homeland. So yeah, later on, it became majority non-Ashkenazi, but in the beginning, it was mainly Ashkenazi.
And Zionism started like before World War II, right?
Right.
It wasn't like officially recognized.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. So like the original, like back in the Ottoman Empire, they were mostly Ashkenazi.
Yeah, still. I mean, in the 1800s, the students of the Vilna Gaon were the first, not Zionists. You have to understand. The real
It's
Yiddish,
evolved.
yeah, it used to be called Mizrahi, but the real religious were always against it. I mean, they were for living in the land of Israel, but they weren't for necessarily establishing a sovereign state under the auspices of Torah. But the effort of, let's say, the more communist-minded Jews who built like kibbutzim, these little socialist enclaves, yes, they were mainly Ashkenazi and they were irreligious. And it's not a coincidence that most of the early Bund meetings and stuff, there's always a picture of Karl Marx. But yes, it was basically, those who populated the kibbutzim were mainly Ashkenazi.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that that was the majority of the population who was there in terms of Jewish density. There have been Jews living in Eretz Israel for the whole time. It's just a matter of who was living where and who was doing what. And a lot of the Mizrahim and a lot of the Sfaradim that were there that had come before.
You got muted. Hello?
Gotcha. So yeah, one thing that confused me too. So essentially, there's been perpetual Jewish settlement in Israel.
Oh, for sure. We have famous rabbis like Maimonides lived in Israel. Nachmanides lived in Israel. Many. Yeah, there's always been a Jewish presence. Not a nationalistic presence, but it was always been seen by many people as like a mitzvah to live in the land of Israel.
Gotcha. So they never got assimilated by the Arabs, essentially. Like even despite being under Arab control for thousands of years, 1,000 years, they never really got assimilated.
Well, the Turks/Ottomans weren't Arabs. They weren't even that religious. I mean, don't forget, Ataturk was for being somewhat Islamic, he outlawed the fez. He changed the Arabic letters to like the letters they use in Turkey nowadays. So the Ottoman Empire, yes, it was Islamic, but it wasn't. I mean, for sure, it wasn't Arab and it wasn't extreme. So it seems like the Jews in some way flourished under them. I mean, they had more freedoms than they would have had if it was under like an actual caliphate. But
okay, yeah. Good. When did that transition essentially? Because I know Israel used to be under the control of the caliphate. When did the Ottomans take over? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
Asher, did you know that the Arizal was half Ashkenazi and half Sephardi?
Yes. His father was Ashkenazi,
Right.
And then he went to Eretz Israel. He lived in Egypt for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, but most people don't know that.
Right. Yeah, but that's significant because that was like significantly before. Everybody says like, "Oh, Ashkenazi never lived in Israel," but like his father's family was established in Israel. His last name actually was Ashkenazi. His father's last name, you know him as Isaac Luria, of course, but like he had like I think that was his mother's name was Luria. I think Ashkenazi. If you look him up, you'll see what I'm talking about. I think it's.
Yeah, so the reason they call him the Arizal, have you ever figured why? I mean, it's Ha'ari, whatever, short for lion or something, but it's not an actual acronym. If you look at the acronym for Arizal, like the Rambam, we know is Rabbeinu Moshe ben Maimon. But for him, it's because the mystics gave him a title of Ha-Elohi, like the divine. It's like most people don't know this, that every time they say the Arizal, you're acknowledging that he's divine. I mean, look it up. I just read this in a Gershom Scholem book.
So fine, Isaac Luria Ashkenazi. We can call him that just for the sake of.
Also, I mean, there's something interesting there. They're saying that that Jews in Israel with the last name Ashkenazi like are actually Sephardi, and Jews in Israel with the last name Mizrahi are actually Ashkenazi. Heard about this?
So I've heard this too. Yeah, because here's what I heard is that like the Syrian community, for example, they have the last name of Ashkenazi, and I heard that maybe it's because Ashkenazi intermingled with Sephardim, like as always has been, you know, not like a new phenomenon. And the Arizal is a perfect example of that,
Well,
right? Because
the big question is, where did Ashkenazim really come from? Because there was a time, especially in the Middle Ages, that the vast majority of Jews were what we would call non-Ashkenazi, right? I mean, because Sephardi really means from Spain/Portugal. So even at the time when you heard of Benjamin Disraeli, or the Israeli, you know, so he was
like he was a prime minister of Britain at one point, right?
correct, yeah, but he was Sephardi or like non-Ashkenazi. Out of nowhere, Ashkenazim outnumbered Sephardim. Out of nowhere, you know. So one theory is Khazaria. You know, that's a theory, and there's another theory,
which is obviously a debunked theory. Like that's not even.
I don't know if it's debunked. I've seen
absurd.
2 studies on this. I mean, I saw a study out of Hebrew U that said that Jews could trace their lineage from there. I don't think it's debunked. I mean, for sure, in terms of a theory, like Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi wrote a whole book, the Kuzari. It wasn't made up. The truth, the idea that all white people come from that is not true, clearly. You know, but to say that no white people come from that.
Ones?
What?
Are the Khazari the Russian Jews?
No, I know there was like they're near the Black Sea, but no one knows exactly. I mean, this is a story from over 1,000 years ago. I don't know if they've ever found the civilization.
No, it was popularized by Arthur Koestler, and it was basically like the same idea as like Herzl wanting, you know, to sort of like come up with a way to keep, you know, like, you know, the ethnic Jewry from getting, you know, anti-Semitism and getting hurt. So he wanted to sort of make an excuse to say like, oh, well, we're not really even Semitic to begin with, it was just a way to sort of like get away with being Jewish without being Jewish. And unfortunately, it caused more problems for us because it has no foundation. There is no, for example, Rashi. I'll give a great example. Rashi is an Ashkenazi Jew, right? Everybody knows who Rashi is if you're an Ashkenazi Jew and you're religious. Nobody ever said that Rashi's yichus was through some Khazar, right? And no, the tradition is that he's descended from King David, right? Chabad always say that, right?
Yeah, it's a different region, by the way. Wait, hold on. Worms or whatever, modern day France is different than what would have been like near the Ukraine, Belarus area. It's I mean, only because you're white, I mean, doesn't automatically lump you in. You know, there's Eastern Europe of today and Western Europe of today, which it's a big place, right? The idea that all white-looking Jews are direct descendants of Moses is also BS. Okay, but I don't buy that all white Jews are descended from the Khazars either. But I think Jews go out of their way to make it seem like, you know, I'm fully indigenous just to, I don't know, please some secularist.
Look, none of us are fully one specific thing, but I'm saying it's erroneous and silly to say that Ashkenazim somehow have a compromised yichus because of some debunked Khazar theory. And I think it's just used to fuel this idea of, you know, like Hitler knew, for example, that the Jews were not some white European race. You know what I'm saying? This has been understood for millennia.
So to use a different word, like the H-man, let's say, I like his view on who was Jewish or not. I mean, had to do with collective responsibility of what he considered communists and the Red Scare. Let's not think that I mean, you know, I mean, he didn't care who kept Torah or who did it. Saying that your yichus or your pedigree is compromised just because you happen to be white and be descended from a convert. I don't even know where that even comes from, right? I don't care if I don't. You see, why do Jews get offended if they call them converts or possible converts? Some blonde hair and blue-eyed Cohen like has the same yichus as a Yemenite. Now there aren't too many Yemenite Kohanims, but in general, I mean, like a dark-skinned, like Sephardi or Mizrahi Jew, there has to be mixtures, converts in there somewhere. You can't go from having more melanin to less melanin, like unless you're not pure. I mean, from that perspective, genetically pure to the Middle East. I mean, let's just be honest.
What was the, because even in the Gemara, right, there's this opinion that, for example, that, because I heard Rob Dror go on a show and make a fool out of himself, but he was using a Gemara that Rashi says that Sarah had white skin, right? You're probably familiar with it. And the BHIs were like, I think it was that Deacon Destruction POS guy, and he was like saying like, oh, you actually believe in this, and it's just like, whatever, you know, like, but that doesn't necessarily mean that.
Wait, so Rob Dror used that to prove that Jews are white?
No, he was simply, I think he was just quoting a Rashi on a random video, and the BHIs caught wind of it, and they said, see, look, you know how they like, you know, they were just talking to him about Mitzitz and the, you know, like they were just trying to like insinuate that he was racist and he was, you know, any horrible thing they could imagine. And so they used that as just a way to say that. And obviously Rashi wasn't saying that like all the, you know, there's nothing in Torah Judaism, as you know, that says that Jews are defined by the color of their skin. It's never been that way. Right. So that's just my point, is to say, well, Ashkenazim have whiter skin, so that means that they must have more convert blood in them. Like, that's a silly statement.
Yeah, no,
that's never the way Jews were defined.
Like, pre-1948, I don't know of any rabbinic text that ever had a big deal with like someone calling them fake Jews or like descended from converts. It's only after 1948, when people are trying to make some indigenous claim to the land of Israel, that they fight tooth and nail and say, no, we're Middle Eastern. Come on, guys. You know, blonde hair and blue-eyed guys, I have clearly, if you're a Jew and you keep Torah, that land belongs to you, 100%. But let's not exaggerate. There was a study, I mean, I think I mentioned this last time, that almost all Ashkenazi Jews could claim Jewishness through one Ashkenazi family, which is the Katzenallenborgen family. And this is, I mean, something I heard from Rabbi Borelwein, that this whole thing that we're like a direct descendant, this and that, you know, it could all be spontaneous. One person could have converted and everyone could think that they have some like yichus going back, some hazaka. You know, this is why I was never a fan of the Lawrence Kellerman argument, that the way we know the Torah is true is because no one would have peddled a lie so long. It's not true. Okay, not true. I mean,
well, you know, that's why I'm a religious Jew. You know, that was what convinced me.
Well, I mean, hopefully this doesn't unconvince you to remain religious.
No, of course. But I'm saying like that was compelling enough for
me.
Like,
wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. Okay. Yes. So you believe Christianity is false, right? And Christianity stands on the back of supposedly 500 people who saw Jesus rise up from the dead.
Right. Paul was the only person
Correct.
who wrote that. But
yes, so you could.
Yes.
So you could be devoutly some other religion and even die for that religion, and that religion still be a lie.
Well, exactly. But I'm not saying that they died for. Remember, it's a slightly different argument, right? Because they're simply saying Lawrence Kellerman's argument wasn't that they died for what they believed to be a lie. It was just that there were so many people that experienced this, and somehow it perpetuated beyond just the generation that experienced it.
But why? Why does it have to be so matter-of-factly? I mean, as a matter of fact, everybody, you know, for the most part, who heard God speak on the mountain, at least the first two, you know, statements, died because they didn't enter, with the exception of Yehoshua and Caleb.
That's not true, Rabbi. That's not true.
No, not everyone, but the majority.
It's just only the 20 years old up. It's the counting on the census and the men.
Please. I have a question for Asher before a train comes.
Okay.
Shoot, a train came. Anyway, so here's my question. Sorry for the background noise. So I was speaking about this with my father-in-law over Shabbat, and he was telling me that it wasn't just Caleb and Joshua. I hate New York. Anyway, he wasn't just Caleb and Joshua. It was, oh God, stop it. And that the women actually, the majority of or not the majority, but like a significant amount of the women actually did make it, who were experiencing the, I'm I'm sorry for all the noise, who are experiencing the the Yetziat Mitzrayim. Is that something you've heard before?
That the majority of the women, not really. I mean, I know they're never counted, right? And this is why we assume it's more than just 600,000.
Right, that's what he told me. That's exactly what he told me. He said that it was only the people who were counted between the ages of 60 and like 25 or something. That's what my father-in-law told me, that was the people who didn't make it into the land, but everybody else did.
It's clear in the Torah, in Numbers, the one counted from the age of 20 years old up, the men and the women, like they were not cursed to die in the desert. Like there were.
Right, that's what my father-in-law was telling me. So then I was like, well, then the Khazari theory has, because that's what a lot of Christians will tell me, is they'll be like, well, it was only Caleb and Joshua that made it into the land, so everybody else.
Okay.
So now what do you do with that Khazari? You know.
No, it's a notion.
Yeah.
It's a clear verse.
Then I realized that there is more credibility. Yeah.
All right, I'll check out that verse.
No,
However,
come on, it's a clear verse. And in the Varim, it says that in the speech of Moses after the 40 years, they say about some of the multitude were in the the revelation of Sinai, like, but that doesn't matter. Like the
anyways, we're
verse and
talking about
number.
I get it. Yeah, but the Lawrence Kellerman argument. I'm not sure if you're familiar. Like it's a famous story. Class. I mean, he used to teach in Neve Yerushalayim, and he's I guess he's a pretty famous speaker. So he says that it's absolute proof that the Torah is true or from God, and
I mean, Rabbi, I watched his whole hour about the argument, and at the end, he explicitly says that it's not a complete proof, but I think it's a solid argument. Like he makes all three cases if they were lying after the fact, before the fact. Like, have you heard the complete?
Okay, it's a convincing argument if you already believe in the Bible. If you believe in the Bible, and then the option is Islam, Judaism, or Christianity, it'll toss you towards the way of Judaism, but it's not what they labeled his talk as, like proof or absolute proof. Okay, it may be evidence, first of all, and sometimes when people put out these videos, they make no distinction between proof and evidence, right? So proof is, I mean, somewhat matter of factly. Evidence means I have evidence. It's essentially a good argument. I don't think it's that good because Christians outnumber Jews many times over, and they have less witnesses. They have less things to go by, and more people have been unalived in the name of Christianity, dying for the sake of Christianity than ever died for the sake of Judaism.
But that's not the argument.
So what's the argument?
The argument that they couldn't he places three cases if the lie was made after the fact, the alleged fact of the revelation of Sinai before the fact, and then he proves with a social a social argument that it could have not been so, like a lie. So the only I don't know how to articulate, but the only option would be that it's true.
Future lie, present lie, or something. He said the
Yes.
only one.
Yes.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, but here's the thing. I agree with you, Asher. It's not a proof, but that's why I coined this term. You can use it if you want. Rational amuna. Like you said, you do have to believe. You have to have some level of faith in the idea of divine inspiration and that sort of thing. But relative to other religions, Judaism is so. Yes, I agree 100%. Now, that's why I don't use like a lot of times on YouTube. A lot of times people say oh, you need to deal with atheism, and you would even say the same thing. You need to deal with it. It's very hard to deal with atheism because I can't logically prove to somebody that God exists. You can't really do it when God, isn't defined exclusively in the physical world. You know what I'm saying? So I don't really. That's why I like debating Christians more than anyone else, because I feel like that's where we have the most common ground. So it's easier for me to speak to them. When I speak to a Muslim, they might claim to believe in, the same concept of God, and maybe it is more similar to that of what we actually believe in Judaism. But it's like we're speaking different languages in terms of scripture, and it's very difficult to come on the same page.
No, I get it. I'm just comparing it to other belief systems and how people are so devout. I mean, Samaritans, when I was in Israel, like I went to this little village, now it's a small village, it's next to Tel Aviv, it's called Holon. Like, and that's where most of the Samaritans live outside of like Shechem, like Har Bracha, where they live in this place called Holon. And they're adamant that we're like the fake ones and they're the real ones and they're Kohanim and they're not converts and all this stuff. And these people devoutly believe this. So someone's lying. So the idea that it's hard to come up with something that the previous generation would say that didn't really happen because grandma would have told me or something like that. It's not true. I mean, people could.
But Robert, just to mention, I know I don't know how to articulate it fully, but I think the argument is like the claim, like they do not claim they saw it, like the Christians claim they that Jesus was the Mary saw it and it was true, like something like that. But the claim of Judaism is like the whole people saw it and passed on to their children. So they couldn't all be lying at the same time.
Yeah. So the thing is, even from a Torah perspective, like what did they actually see? Because his argument wasn't the miracles in Egypt.
Yeah.
He said the experience of Mount Sinai, but the experience of Mount Sinai, at least according to the Torah, was just hearing God speak two of the statements. That's the whole thing. And then Moses just started talking. So that's what they're talking about, that they heard God or even saw God speak two of the statements.
Like the Devarim says, remember you didn't see nothing in the midst of the fire. You see the words, but not the figure, like the likeness.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good argument. I mean, yeah, I don't think it's such a good argument.
The Khazari argument goes more than just the Sinai experience, though. I think it also goes into more detail about the manna and just different aspects of like.
Well, that's another point. Like the Lawrence Kellerman argument wasn't made up by Lawrence Kellerman. It appears in the Khazari. That's like it's
right. It's Khazari light. I refer to it as Khazari light. I have a reason to believe by Rabbi David Gottlieb, which I prefer to honestly Kellerman's perspective. I think it gives a little, but once again, it's not a slam dunk proof, and I get it. That's how it's presented. It's a little disingenuous. I get it. Just it's the same way like Tovia Singer, like the same gripes that Courtney has with Tovia Singer is the same gripes that you have with. That's what I'm getting at.
No, I could tolerate Lawrence Kellerman.
Hey,
look, Rabbi Mizrahi has these series. Also, this guy, Yaron Rubin, has these video series saying proof, absolute proof. I mean, they use the word proof like it's going out of style. And then essentially it gets people to come. The truth is you're getting people who would have come anyways. Right? I mean, people who just look.
Clickbait. It's clickbait. Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
However,
look, I clickbait.
but it delegitimizes Judaism, or it delegitimizes religious Jews when people speak like that in the name of Judaism. There's this guy named Rabbi Mechanic, right, who has a similar thing. Like, I have proof that the Torah is true. Truth be told, I was going through lives today because I like hopping into religious lives and hearing people talk. First of all, there are hardly any religious Jewish lives. But if you notice, Christian lives are a lot more academic than Jewish lives, right? In terms of when they're talking about religion. It seems that, have you ever heard like a Jewish shiur versus a Christian shiur? To be honest, like unless you're trying to learn like the halachas or sugya, like more serious.
Shiur is all about being saved. It's all about
not necessarily. Christians have actual Bible studies.
Baptism.
Okay. So Christians actually have Bible studies, while I don't know what Jews are talking about. Unless you go to yutorah.org and you're listening to classes by rabbis for rabbis, I would say 90% of the shiurim of Judaism online are disposable. You'll learn more in a Christian one. And I'm not talking about them talking about Jesus, them talking about, the Hebrew, the Greek, and history. Let's be honest. We have to keep up, because it's, even on TikTok, especially on TikTok and in Clubhouse, Okay, any type of Jewish discussion, there's going to be cursing. There's going to be people sending each other to hell, right? Now, I'm not including Sam Shimon and Christians who like don't behave like Christians, like should behave. But overall, if someone really wanted to learn history or anything, it seems that so far Christians are ahead. I'm trying to be honest here. Okay, first you tell the truth and then you give your opinion. For some reason, again, here look. Most people on YouTube who listen to Torah classes will listen to a Tovia Singer class, okay, or a Tanakh talk class. So you have a whole channel dedicated to disproving another religion. Not on expounding your own religion. So I don't know for how many years can someone listen to Michael Skobach. Okay, that's it. Study the laws of Eruvin, of Gittin, or something. It's
Robert.
Yeah.
But I just don't understand. Like all the Christian Bible studies are at least like the Jewish studies that you claim are irrational and you have to tolerate, especially from the rabbis.
Wait, no.
I've heard so many from both sides. Obviously,
Christians don't use commentators when they study the Bible. Okay, when you're studying like your Parashat Shavua class, it's like what you're learning really is like 70% Rashi. Rashi says this, but who cares? Ultimately, who cares? According to the Pashat, who cares?
Well, if you watch my weekly Parsha with Yehuda, which basically no one watches, I do bring up like interesting like points from the Rashi, but like I'll also insert my own and yes, is it geared toward? The thing is, it's supposed to be geared toward. I know you're going to be critical of this, but like basically debunking like Christian beliefs around the Parsha of the week, and usually it's gearing toward like atonement or the angel of the Lord or things.
Who's the man?
Go through.
Dennis Prager is the man. Okay, compare his rational Bible to everything else. I remember I said it was better than Rashi, and somebody got upset. Clearly, it's better than Rashi. Let's be honest. I don't believe in Yoridata the road. They don't came before.
Robert, have you seen some things they say? He says like I like him very much, but come on, this dogma of having to explain every hoax, it's what he says. He doesn't believe that should remain unexplained, so he like forces into some weird explanation, like a possibility that the impure animals, this distinction made by God, it was to eventually we stop eating meat. Like,
so,
can you imagine that when there is like the Pesach? What?
So it's a reasonable interpretation. That means
it's not, because that's an eternal law of eating the Pesach sacrifice. But it seems like he doesn't believe the Torah is eternal.
Okay, I'm not trying to justify every commentary on every verse, but for the most part, I would take a Peshat-based commentary over a Midrashic-based commentary any day. Okay, there's times that the bulk of what Rashi brings down is not even in the text. It's kind of like he's bringing down legends. Like I get it. It makes it more fun to read, but it gets to a point that people forget to make the distinction between Rashi and the Chumash. You know how many times I have a debate with people and they're swearing that they're quoting the Chumash and they're quoting Rashi? All right, so from that perspective,
right, that happens. Look, when I grew, I had the same experience. I saw somebody on Jews for Jesus, like their website, and this is actually my exact experience too. When I was learning in Hebrew school or for pre-kindergarten, I did go to a Hebrew day school, but I went to public school for everything else. And when I remember learning the Midrash about how Abraham Avinu like destroyed the idols and terachs. Apparently this is in the Quran too, that's wild to me. But like, I thought that was in, the Parsha. It's not, it doesn't say that there, but that's kind of like, for whatever reason, that one kind of got formed into, like where Abraham thought like, oh, maybe the sun is God. And then the sun went down and maybe the moon is God.
You guys like the show? Hold on a second. Here, like people in the audience, because we're on TikTok also, like the show, like so we can get more people on here. Like click, 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 click. Yeah, just tap on the screen, tap, like a bunch of times so we could get these numbers up. Hopefully, I just have a few minutes. I'm going out to dinner in a minute.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I heard him talking about the angel of the Lord when he battles Christians. I actually wanted to get the Jewish perspective on that. And is there a remez speaking about why, Moses, who represents the law, didn't get into the Holy Land? Like, is there any kind of undertone to that?
Oh, so I don't believe in remez and I don't believe in sod, like hints or secrets. In terms of the angel of the Lord, I can tell you what rabbis say that the Malach HaMavet is.
I can give you my answer. Look, it's very
Alright.
simple, right? According to the Tanakh, God literally says that you are not to worship him in any form in Deuteronomy chapter 4. So when you look at that and you see God's explicit command that you saw no form at Horeb when I spoke to you out of the midst of the fire, and then he said for future generations not to make any form, including the form of the moon, the sun, and the stars, which is not man-made, right? Because a lot of Christians like to be like, oh, there's a loophole, it's only man-made things. No, it does not matter if it's man-made or God-made or pre-existing, whatever. Any form is forbidden for worship. So when you look at the angel of the Lord, he is the form of a man, right? An angel. Literally, that's the definition of.
Well, what about when Joshua worshipped the angel of the Lord's army? Like he had to take.
The angel. It says it says v'yishtacho is the Hebrew, and it just means prostrate. And prostration doesn't necessarily mean that somebody is worshiping somebody divinely. For example, Daniel in Daniel chapter 8, when Gabriel, it literally says the name Gabriel, and it says that when Daniel saw him, he fell on his face, very similarly to when the angel of the Lord appears. Now, if I were a Christian and I were using that logic, then it would be like, oh, look, Gabriel is a pre-incarnate Jesus angel. No, it doesn't work because his name's Gabriel. His name's not, the angel of the Lord. So you can't be like, oh, who is this mysterious angel? Who's speaking, the angel or God? Right? You can't use that silly argument.
And then the name, and then the angel that Isaac wrestled, and they named it. He wrestled with God, and that's how Israel got his name. What, that wasn't God in a form.
So what it says that he wrestled with Elohim, and Elohim does not necessarily refer to the divine. It doesn't refer necessarily to Hashem, because for example, in Exodus chapter 7, verse 1. Moses is called an Elohim to Pharaoh. So if I use the Christian logic that it says, I have seen Elohim and still lived in, Genesis 32 with Jacob, then I guess Moses
It's problematic,
is God.
either way. It's problematic. I mean,
Well, before I know you got to go. What's the guy I'm speaking with? Do you have a channel that I could check out as well?
Yes, Yehuda Yisrael.
Yehuda Israel. Is it in the comments?
It's my name on, you can follow me. It's on my, it's literally my everything you see here.
Yeah.
Like
Okay. All right, cool. Appreciate the convo, fellas. Always a pleasure.
You'll see
Robert.
the avatar is the same as my picture.
Can I ask a quick question
Yeah.
about the Eruvin? I've heard you saying that the only kosher Eruv that is the Chabad one. And by the way, I don't understand anything. Like it's very long, the chapter on the Rambam and the Gemara. So I only know that it's to make it able to carry into a Carmelis. Like, is that right?
All right. So Carmelis is it's an eruv that's rabbinic. It's not from the Torah. Wait. The reason I think Chabad is right in this area, like mainly they go by the Rambam in this area, like to the T. So according to the Rambam, you actually need actual natural borders or an actual wall. So nowadays they do something called a surat petach, which is they put a string from these like makeshift doors, right? And they say that acts like an actual barrier. And so that doesn't appear anywhere in the Talmud or anywhere, in any codified set, like the Rambam or anything based off the Rambam. So this is why, and also like Rashi brings down the notion of a Reshut Rabbim, like needing, I think, over 600,000 people. So this is also appears nowhere in Halakha. I mean, like nowhere in the Talmud or anything. So it seems like the strictest opinion is the Rambam's understanding, not the strictest, like the most authentic opinion that could actually be built off the Torah. And the Eruvin that we have nowadays were instituted by Ashkenazim just so people could feel that they're not actually breaking Shabbos, and probably, because I mean, people are going to carry their babies, push strollers, either way. So that's the way I heard it. I really should do a big study on the whole notion of the Reuven. Truth be told, I carry in the Eruv just because I mean, what am I going to tell my kids? Everyone here, I live in an Eruv, like in a Jewish community. But I'm not going to say that it actually goes according to how it actually appears in the Rambam. No.
But I mean, just if I understand right, an Eruv can only be made in a Carmelit's, not in a Reshut Rabin, right?
No. What are you talking about?
I mean, because like the
We're talking
Reshut Rabin,
about boundaries, right?
yes,
So
the
Reshut
Reshut Rabin is
finds a boundary.
biblical, right?
So Carmelis, let me see. Let me look this up.
Carmel
Carmelis,
is like a Reshut Rabin that is rabbinical, right?
correct.
So
it's
it can be make lenient by a Eruv, like.
Hold on. I have to research this more. I mean, you got me off guard on this one. But I don't think I have any videos like necessarily like on the notion of an Eruv outside of the Rambam's understanding of physical borders of actually having an actual wall. What I'm talking about, the borders itself. And what are you talking about in terms to determine like the edges of an Eruv? Not the idea of you can make an Eruv, right? Yeah, but what would you consider the perimeter?
No, I don't know. I just heard about it. That is like the string that pass like across the neighborhood. Like I don't know.
Yeah, no, there's ways you make an Eruv, like outside of there being a perimeter, which is essentially like they will have a bunch of houses, and then one of those houses will have some food in it, like a box of matzah, and then it becomes somewhat communal. So like now you have to define the parameters of that Eruv. So there's many different parts to it. But yeah, I mean, I should like really like do a whole study on it, like just so I could become like really, really hardcore familiar with it. But anyways, like I'm still trying to look up the verse I was talking about.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. I mean, like I hear Eruvin is very, very, very complex, so I wouldn't.
Because I'm in Machon Mamre, like, and I'm looking up because I thought it said that he did worship the angel. I mean, chapter 5, verse 14.
Oh, are you kidding me? Oh,
no, I'm just curious. I'm just,
No, it says Vayishta. It says.
Yeah, but what chapter is it?
Vayishtacho.
I mean, it's the 5th chapter, right?
Yehoshua, chapter 5, verse 13, I believe.
13. Okay, that's what I don't.
You know how many times these Christians bring up these verses? It's the same ones every time. Everyone thinks I know all this Tanakh, but it's really just because Christians bring up the same verses every 2 seconds. It's verse 13, is it? I don't know. I'm assuming it is.
No.
By the way, that's the response I've heard Tovia Singer saying. The response you just said.
Give an adequate response, in my opinion. But anyway, yeah. What? The argument that they make is because in Exodus 3, Moses took off his shoes. They claim that because Yahushua took off his shoes, and that they're like, who's speaking? The angel of God. Who's speaking? The angel of God. And they use this stupid, argument that, because the angel is speaking and then God is speaking, and it's hard to differentiate between them, they use that as this.
So yeah, I mean, it just says that he fell on his face.
Exactly, and you know that's not used for exclusive divine worship.
Oh yeah, no,
right?
I mean, you could fall in front of a king too. That's not Jewish. It necessarily
exactly.
To offer them kavod.
It says that Yaakov fell in front of Esav, and it uses the same word, v'yishtacho or v'yishtachavu, like it's used not for exclusive to divine worship. So
That's it.
No, look, this is my area of expertise, Asher. I've been dealing with this angel of the Lord nonsense for. I haven't seen any counter missionaries deal with it, and that's why I took it upon myself. So I call it the Great Jesus Angel Hunt, and I say every anonymous angel, they claim that he's has dibs on, and I'm just So anyway.
Sounds good. All right, next, guys, like the show. I got probably 5 more minutes here. My wife wants to go eat. What else, Felipe? What else you have?
So, Rob, I was meaning to ask you last week. You you've mentioned the Rashban on his notion being different from the rabbis about the definition of the day, like meaning the 24 hours day.
Yeah.
But what I think, and I would ask that actually they agree with the Rashban, but the reason that Shabbos should be kept like from Friday night is because like there is a Kalva Homer, like they use a Mida of Rabbi Shmuel, one of the 13, uh, to deduce that just like the verse about Yom Kippur that should be kept from like the evening of the ninth to the evening of the 10th, that also should be kept like in Shabbos. It's just like they saying that is the Friday, they call Friday, but the Torah says it has to be kept from Friday. Like, did you understand at all what I mean?
You're talking about after Pesach?
No, I'm talking about like the Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is like the 10th, right? The 10th
Right.
day of. So the verse says that should be kept the evening from the ninth day of the month to the evening to the of the 10th day of the month. So
What
in
verse?
like
I'm curious.
I think it's Leviticus, but basically the source I'm saying is like the Medrash Halacha, the Mechilta, that on the verse of the Ten Commandments, they say that it only means that you should be keeping Shabbos on the day, like the 12 hours light part of the day, on the actual like Saturday. But then
I don't know.
they
All right.
what?
So I'm not familiar with the verse that specifically mentions from night to night. All right. I mean, I understand that's what we do in halakha, but I don't think they take it from a verse. I mean, I'd like to see the verse.
I can like shut up my screen the smartphone to search like I think
Yeah. I mean, it's typically what Leviticus 23, right? I mean, that talks about all the holidays.
yes
But I don't.
I think it is.
Uh-huh.
I'm just saying like they actually is like they saying that it's not because of this Kalva Homer or another one of the middle of the 13 meters of Rabbi Shmuel. It should be only kept on the day of Shabbos, the actual day. But they derive from like the argument that should be kept also in the eve of Shabbos. I think it's just like the word eve means like
Oh, that's fine.
the night before the day, like Christmas Eve, the 24th.
So I'm not
It's
familiar with
something
that Papa Homer, by the way. Yeah, I mean, I'll take your word for it. I mean that it's there. No, like my point is that you yourself, or like any of us, could disagree with something declared rabbinic, but we still have to do it. And I'm
no, I understand, but I mean, like it seems that they didn't disagree with the Rashban. Like
uh,
the definition is from and the argument of the Rashban is very good.
well, so you're
Like
saying the
it's
Rashban
perfect.
didn't make it up. He basically was just quoting Chazal.
I mean, he was quoting like the Bible, the actual verse of Genesis.
Mm,
I
interesting.
mean,
Okay.
like the reason is not like the Saturday start from like Friday night. The reason is like the should be kept from the night of the last day from like the day of the actual day. It's just
Mm-hmm. Interesting. All right. Next, hurry up. Let's go for it. What's up with TikTok today? It's like sometimes you have like 100 watching, and now we have 8. All right, we got from people here. Hello, David in the house. We have my friend Adira in the house. Where's everybody? Guys, like the show, like the show. All right, Felipe, I guess it's you. Go, what's next?
I guess I should remember many things.
Felipe, what's your Hebrew name?
My Hebrew name. I thought about Havel, like Abel. I like it. I like how it sounds English and Portuguese, but not in Hebrew, by the way.
I mean, you can Felipe. You know, I don't know. There's some people that they call them up to the Torah, like by their secular name. The whole notion of Hebrew names is not even a halakha. It's like I'm not sure when this became popular, right? I mean, I understand if you're living in biblical Israel, even in Talmudic times, like you're not so detached from Israel, so that you'll be named by one of your uncles, and it's typically a Hebrew name. But you know, like the uncleses out there, there's
Like Ashkenazim, many of them don't have like Manis is not like a biblical name, right?
Ashkenazim don't have biblical. I mean, some of them have Yiddish names.
Yes, like Nilsson.
Yeah, like Dove Bear. Well, Dove is bear, and bear is bear. It's just like bear. Razel. Yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, straight names. You know, Alexander, by the way. Yeah, like Chief Pauly Stein is. It's like it's like a yeshivish name now. They call him Sender. Yeah, so Sender comes from Alexander. Alexander was liked by the Jewish people. There's a few dates that you could put when you're writing like a ketubah, and like one of the dates is from like the Greek kingdom of Alexander, or from like the creation of the world. And not to mention that a Torah scroll could be written in Greek and be kosher. The question is, the rabbis say that type of Greek was lost, so it couldn't be done nowadays. Supposedly that's what they say. I guess they just do that so people don't when we start reading in Greek, like in the synagogue and with the bracha. It shows it itself. I mean, Hebrew is not like holy from the perspective that a Kabbalist says it's holy. Like Maimonides says, the only thing that makes Hebrew holy is that it's the only language that doesn't have bad words in it, and it's a language that the original Torah is written in, but it's not like it's magical. Like Kabbalists will say, like every letter has special powers and stuff like that. But anyways,
do you think the Ksav Ashur is like the one that God revealed to Daniel? Like I've heard Rabbi Britovitz talking about that. The Paleo Hebrew is up until Daniel. Then God revealed to Daniel in the writing on the wall.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, because Katav Ashuri is Assyrian script, but you know it was introduced in Babylon. So you could call it Babylonian script. But yeah, I don't even know. I mean, do Samaritans write their Sifrei Torah in Paleo Hebrew or what? I don't think I've ever seen a Samaritan Sifrei Torah. But anyways,
I know that. Oh, okay.
Guys, I'm on my way out. I just wanted to come up for an hour. I might come back later. All right. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for stopping by, Felipe.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Bye, Kimberly.